But first, ethnic tension has afflicted India for centuries and is not fading away as the giant nation rushes to modernise. In recent months, for example, violence has again erupted between the indigenous Bodo tribe and Muslims in Assam. The new attacks come just 3 months after close to 100 people were killed in ethnic clashes, which also displaced nearly 500,000 villagers. Karishma Vyas reports from Assam, and a warning to viewers, this story does contain some disturbing footage.
These are the images from India last August that made global headlines. Tens of thousands of people from the country's northeast cramming into trains, trying to flee urban centres. They were running for their lives. Text messages warning of attacks by Muslims had caused mayhem amongst northeasterners. But this was just the aftermath of a bigger and bloodier conflict unfolding thousands of kilometres away. I've travelled to the remote northeastern state of Assam to investigate the root cause of this national crisis and to find out why hundreds of thousands of people here abandoned their homes. At least some of the answers can be found here in a government-run relief camp. There are currently more than 40,000 people living in such centres across Assam's Kokrajhar, Chirang and Dhubri districts. They have sought refuge here since July, when clashes between the Bodo tribe and Muslim villagers erupted after young men from both communities were killed. Almost 100 people died in the ensuing violence, and some 400,000 villagers fled their homes. Umar Ali Sheikh has lived in this converted high school since July with his wife, daughter-in-law and grandchildren. Both his sons were butchered with machetes when Bodo men came to their village looking for Muslims.
When we saw the bodies, they were not shot. They were hacked to death with daggers. Their bodies had injuries on the throat, on the back of the neck, on the legs. That's what we could see.
This amateur footage shows the true horror of the violence. Mobs of Bodo and Muslim men attacking each other's villages, burning homes and leaving a trail of bodies. Paramilitary troops and the army were called in to restore order, but news had already spread, infuriating Islamic communities across India. They felt Muslims were being targeted in communal violence. Northeasterners faced reprisal attacks in major cities, sparking this mass exodus. 3 months on, tens of thousands of people continue to live in temporary shelters. There are still more than 100 relief camps run by the government for villagers fleeing the Bodo Muslim violence in July. This is Doturi camp, and there are more than 700 people living here. Between them, they have 11 toilets and 2 showers. But they're too afraid to go back home, fearing more attacks if they return. They say government food rations are not enough and their children are constantly getting sick. This mother is worried about a serious infection on her son's face, but she says doctors rarely come here, and when they do, medicine is always in short supply. Sanitation, food and healthcare are all gravely lacking. But Nilin Datta is concerned about a more sinister problem. He heads a local think tank called the Strategic Research Analysis Organization. And like some observers, he believes the clashes are part of a systematic campaign by Bodo militants to ethnically cleanse this region of other minorities, especially Muslims. For decades, the Bodo tribe has demanded its own state, staging a bloody insurgency that claimed thousands of lives. In 2003, they were given an autonomous region as a compromise. But many believe the growth in the Muslim population here is threatening Bodo dominance.
The claim for a separate Bodo state is still there. Yet, even in these districts, Boros themselves may constitute the largest group, largest community, but even they do not constitute a majority. So that comes in as a big hurdle. So this is almost legitimizing ethnic cleansing, that you drive out people who are non-Boros, that would somehow immediately bolster the number or the percentage of Boros.
There is evidence to suggest Muslims are being prevented from returning to their land. These farmers from a nearby relief camp are forced to harvest their crops under armed guard. The charred remains of their homes stand close by, burnt and looted during the clashes. Harvesting is essential for their survival, but without protection, they say their Bodo neighbours would murder them.
We tried to come back to our village just a week after the incident, but whenever we tried to take the boats to return, a large crowd of Bodos would gather on the northern bank of the Ai River, preventing us from returning.
These tensions between the Bodos and the Muslims are not religious. What they're fighting over is far more valued here: land. In this heavily agricultural region, everybody wants it, but there's simply not enough. Muslims are increasingly acquiring farms, much to the alarm of the indigenous Bodo tribe. They want the government to implement a 19th century law giving them sole rights over what they say is their ancestral land.
That is the fear of the tribal people, that the tribal people, as they are not too educated, not too wealthy, they always depend on land. So if the government of Assam does not implement the act, surely the land will go to the non-tribals and the tribal people will be landless in their own land.
Rational or not, this fear is endemic amongst ordinary Bodos. They believe that most Muslims here are illegal migrants from neighbouring Bangladesh, squatting on their land.
They're
coming into our area every day. Every year 10 or 15 families settle in our area. After the 24th of July incident, on October 3 or 4 when I went back to my home, I saw a new Bangladeshi family building a house there.
But the government rejects these allegations. The border is porous, they admit, but India is guarding its territory.
See, I've looked at the census figures and I don't see any evidence of any large-scale illegal migration into, say, Kokrajhar and those districts. So we are actually not constructing a wall, but we are constructing a fence, which is more or less about 95% of the fencing has been done.
The July violence and these squalid relief camps are an embarrassment for the government. They've promised to empty these huts by the end of the year. But what of the ethnic tensions that continue to simmer? Little has been done to address the deep suspicion between Bodos and Muslims, or to resolve their dispute over land. With sporadic attacks continuing on both communities, many here can only wait and watch for the next crisis.